finally, this is what I've been waiting for. Chained Soldier actually gets better. I will say the developing relationship between Yuki and Kyoka is the strongest thing about Mato Seihei no Slave. Most of the time, I wish it was just them and maybe half the amount of characters in the ensemble. Takehiro can't handle an ensemble cast, and Yohei Takemura isn't very good of an artist at all, so there's no physical differentiation between these girls. But from chapter 70 onwards, the manga becomes something very different from what came before. In my previous installments of Chain Soldier, I didn't really like this series. There are definitely elements that make it strong, such as the aforementioned relationship between the two leads, a few of the chicks in the ensemble cast like Himari and Shushu, and of course my baby moms Ren Yamashiro. But aside from those select characters, I never really felt any connection to the story. I felt the plot was extremely listless, and the lack of any real character design between the villains and the heroines just made this such a boring series, and the fan service was a complete turnoff. Every single chapter would involve Yuki getting a reward from one of these other chicks in the harem, and I don't know, it didn't make for an exciting series. It just made for the same thing every single week, which I get it, this is a harem battle manga, but it's still a battle manga, so I don't know, do something interesting and engaging. At the risk of offending someone, I feel Chained Soldier is written in mind for an audience that hasn't had much interactions with women. In fact, there's a gag in chapter 73 where Yankee bitch, oh my god, what's her name? Mira walks in on the main duo exchanging rewards, and she blushes and acts like it's weird for a man and woman to be with each other sexually. This is what confuses me. Why try to paint so many of your characters as innocent when there's dry humping in literally every single chapter? It plays out like Takehiro doesn't know what he wants to do with his story, so instead of fleshing it out with exposition and dialogue, he just guns for misunderstanding tropes rooted in ecchi. And don't get me started on how every character has such a dull personality. I don't understand the power system, why these characters can now fly is kind of weird, and what the hell is up with the incesty extra chapters? That is like the weirdest aspect of this manga. I really didn't have much hope for Mato Seihei until the battle in Yokohama. This to me is one of the most standout arcs in a battle shonen that I've read in quite some time. I really enjoyed this arc. The battle between Mira and the Thunder God was absolutely brilliant. It reminded me of mid-period Naruto. Clone techniques are a very simple way to write a battle, but it was done pretty well here. The way the entire city is explored and innocent lives are placed at stake makes this a much stronger fight than any other from earlier on in the series. Mato is too barren of a landscape to fight in all of the time, but the battle in Yokohama brings about all of the excitement that I was hoping for when I originally started this series. And while the Yokohama battle was definitely excellent, it did kind of bring up some questions that I had earlier in the series that haven't been addressed yet. Like, what are the other Mato girls doing when they aren't in battle with Yuki? Everything in this manga revolves around Yuki, and it makes it so boring. There's no reason to showcase a dozen different cunts if they're all the same flavor. Okay, I pulled that line from someone I overheard say it at Niagara Falls. I'm sorry, I had to say it. There's no point to having them in this manga if they can't do anything to progress the plot when they're off screen. But you know, I think the biggest issue with Chain Soldier and something that would make it a lot better is if these characters just fucked. There's legitimately like 30 women in this manga and maybe 4 or 5 guys that have speaking roles, but really it's about Yuki and all of the other chicks. And you know, they should be engaging in sex. Like, this is the kind of series that openly talks about sex and has sexually related content. So I don't understand why they don't do that. We need to have a harem manga where the main character is hooking up with a couple of the girls. When you have that sort of tension and jealousy within a group that has to work with one another, but they also have emotional ties to each other outside of their 9 to 5, that makes for a more engaging series. And I know Takahiro has the ability to write that, but I think he doesn't believe in his audience. I think that sort of stance in the plot would be too much for them. And another thing that gets to me is that every girl is into Yuki. Every single one of them. There isn't a single chick in this manga that's like, I'm not really into Yuki. They all have to have some sort of interaction with him. They all want to combine with him. None of them have any reluctance to giving rewards to Yuki. None of them have boyfriends or anything in the real world. So it's like, it's false. It's all false and it's bullshit. You've given us a harem cast that is so paper thin, it just doesn't make sense and it's not fun. If you're 15 and this is your first battle shonen, I can see why you would be absolutely into this series. If you've never touched a girl consensually, I can see why you think this would be highbrow writing, but it's not. And the Battle of Yokohama made me realize that even though I'm going to stick with this manga, it just has too many flaws for me to really recommend to anybody. Akame ga Kill was a lot better than this manga, which is hard for me to say because as much as I liked Akame, it wasn't a good story and it didn't have a great ending. Talk about a worse drop off than Kyle Lowry in Miami. I will give it to the duo. They made adjustments to the monsters, and that was a good move. They were the default Putty Patrol design for like ever, but now they actually have some semblance of power creep, and this gives many more opportunities for the other characters in the harem to actually get some shine and show the full extent of their abilities. It's too bad this took almost 100 chapters to do. I really do think the concept of Shuki is great, but it's just not done well. Hopefully, Takahiro can improve on this aspect of his villains, and they still fight like previous Shuki, so I don't know. And you know what? As much of a cop out as it was for the sister to come and save Yuki from being devoured, I do absolutely love her character. She's one of my favorite things in this series alongside the main couple, and I wish she was a regular cast member. It took 100 chapters, but I'm now a fan of this series. I wouldn't recommend it though. That's the honest truth. I would suggest wait for the anime to come out, and if you enjoy that adaptation, then feel free to go forward and read the manga. But for a manga, especially a bi-weekly manga like this, to take so long to get to such an interesting arc and to start developing its characters and its villains and expanding the power system of that world, if there wasn't ecchi in literally every single chapter, this shit would have been cancelled long ago. I'm giving Chain Soldier a 5 out of 10.